Elden Ring Nightreign's hard mode / ranked mode hybrid has been released, and it is extremely difficult, especially at the higher ranks. But also, it's the most fun I've ever had with this game. If you haven't yet played this mode, I think you'll really like it. My team and I spent about a week grinding to get to depth 5, that's the name of the maximum rank in this mode, and in this video I'm going to break down exactly what our strategy was and what you can do to have a better chance at winning your games and climbing the depths. And while you're climbing out of the depths, you'll need to fuel that grind with today's video sponsor, Factor. They make some of the most delicious meal prepped meals that I've ever had, to the point where I've been getting their meals for years at this point. They show up at your door as often as every week, fresh, never frozen, and taste amazing. There's never been better variety with Factor until right now, as they've just doubled the size of their menu to 80+ rotating weekly meals, making meeting your dietary goals while actually getting food that you want to eat that much easier. They've also recently added a couple more health restrictions to help meet your dietary goals, like gluten-free, free from low-quality seed oils, and no refined sugars. And seriously, if you've never tried Factor meals before, they manage to be so incredibly delicious without any need for you to do any cooking or prep work. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code BUSHYFB50 to get 50% off, plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code BUSHYFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Let's start with the first question that you should probably be asking yourself. What character should I be playing if I want the best chance of winning these games in the depths? And believe it or not, in this mode, I think there's actually a wider variety of at least somewhat valid choices. In the regular version of the game, you don't really have to think about survivability that much, because hardly anything will one-shot any character. So the best team comps outside of the depths usually use only high damage teams like Duchess, Iron Eye, and Recluse. But going into the depths, survivability matters a lot more, and the very inflated health bars make status effects feel like they might make a little bit more of an impact. So I think you're actually left with a lot of options. Wilder, Raider, and Guardian all offer a good bit of survivability. Recluse and Duchess are still damage powerhouses. Executor can put out a lot of status and make the early game easier if that's the part that you're struggling with, and Iron Eye is still just objectively the strongest character in the game, but the caveat is it really only makes sense to have one of them on your team. The only character I think you definitely should not play is Revenant. Her summons get one shot, incantations are not very powerful in this game, and even if they were, Recluse would have a more synergistic set of abilities with more flexibility. Now, with all that said and out of the way, so that you don't crucify me for hating on your favorite characters, except for Revenant mains, I'm sure you guys are typing up a storm right now, I still think there's a pretty objectively strongest team comp. To start off, any optimal team is going to have exactly one Iron Eye. The Mark ability is the strongest ability in the game, offering a massive team-wide damage increase because of the 10% buff to all damage, in addition to the Mark pops, which do very large bursts all on their own, the large amount of stagger damage that's built up by the Mark pops, and the flexibility and safety that's provided by using a bow. You're less likely to be targeted, and that mitigates one of the biggest downsides of Iron Eye because he is pretty squishy. Getting your teammates back up with a bow is a lot easier than getting them back up with a melee weapon, since you can do it from a safe range. There's also new depth relic effects that make Iron Eye much stronger, but I'll get more into builds and playstyles of these characters a little later into the video. Now, you may be asking, if Iron Eye is so good, why not just run 3 of them? The reason why you don't want to run any more than one Iron Eye on your team comp is because the Mark ability doesn't stack with itself. So if you have 2 Iron Eyes, you end up with one Iron Eye that has a useful Mark ability and another Iron Eye that is more or less just playing a bow character, which isn't the strongest thing he can be doing. And that's even if the second Iron Eye is running the new Poison Mark Depth Relic effect, it's just not worth it. There's better things to be doing. The next character that I think you should be running is Duchess. She has the highest damage output potential of any character in the game due to the fact that she gets sorcery scaling that rivals Recluse, and she has the restage ability that juices damage done by the whole team even higher. A well-played Duchess can be the difference between fights that take 1 minute to complete and fights that take 10 minutes to complete. However, playing Duchess well can be a little tough, and there's a couple downsides with picking this character. She's obviously squishy, so you'll need to share defensive items like damage negation at full HP between the Duchess and the Iron Eye first, which can make it take a while for the whole team to get survivability. She also has a slim chance of low rolling and missing a staff to enable her sorcery build, but even more importantly, the Duchess needs to get fed Starlight Shards, otherwise she'll run out of FP for the Night Bosses and Night Lords. Every Sorcerer's Rise needs to be looted for shards, every merchant needs to have the shards bought from them, and even then, the Duchess still needs to be a little careful with FP use. I could definitely see an argument to use Recluse in place of Duchess here, especially if you're queuing into matchmaking and you don't want to rely on your teammates to buy shards for you. But understand, if you're taking Recluse over Duchess, your damage ceiling is going to be a little lower and your early game is going to be slower. The final character that rounds out this team comp is Wilder. This may seem a little odd, and to be honest with you, this is the character in the comp that matters the least, but there's still a good reason why Wilder fills the role the best. Crafting a team comp that actually has synergy between the characters is pretty tough because you don't want multiple players looking for the same type of gear, because that makes it much more likely that someone won't get a good build. That's why we can't run Duchess or Recluse in this slot, because trying to find two good staffs for two different players is way too optimistic for this mode, where you have to play out every game and you want to win every game. That also has the downside of being an extremely squishy comp, where it would be really hard for the whole team to earn a build that has some survivability. The reason to choose Wilder specifically out of the characters remaining is because of stance buildup and survivability. Essentially, the whole idea of this team comp is to get the Duchess as many safe windows as possible to cast charged sorceries. And we do that through big stance breaks and the micro staggers caused by things like Mark Pops and Wilder's ultimate. Wilder is actually the best character at building stance in the game. It's not Raider. Greatswords with charged R2s are much faster at stance breaking than Raider's terrible charged animation on colossal weapons, in addition to the fact that Wilder is actually more survivable than Raider because of the Sixth Sense passive. From the very beginning of the run, Wilder can always tank one hit, which is much better than having slightly more health with Raider. Like I said, the difference between the different characters that you can choose for this role are not huge, but Wilder will definitely offer the most to the team here. One final benefit to this exact team comp is that all three characters have ults that can reasonably res their teammates. Both Wilder and Iron Eye insta-res 2 bars and below, and Duchess's invisibility can last long enough to make resing 3 bars pretty easy. Now let's go over relic builds. For Iron Eye, my favorite default build is Poison Iron Eye, but I think Iron Eye is the one that should switch up his relics the most to counteract the Night Lord that you're facing. I'll go over all the builds that I used for Iron Eye, but if you're just starting out and don't have a bunch of spare merc to get different relic builds, this Poison build should be the first one to target, as it's only really not great against Holster and Augur. To start off, for every character in every build, we're gonna be running the guaranteed yellow Everjail relic. Hate it or love it, it doesn't really matter. The Everjail perk is the strongest effect in the game. It's on a guaranteed relic that you buy from the collector signboard. There is zero excuse to not be running it if you're trying to climb ranks in Deep of the Night. The second relic for Poison Iron Eye is Knight of the Wise, which is another guaranteed relic that you get from beating Sentient Pest the first time. And it gives your starting bow poison, along with a damage buff every time something gets poisoned. For the third relic, the only thing you really need is Iron Eye +1 character skill. Being able to mark more often as the Iron Eye and ensuring that you have as close to 100% uptime on the mark as possible is the best thing you can be doing for your team. It would be nice if you could get some other useful perks on this relic as well, like improved bow attack power or improved initial standard attack, but honestly, none of that is necessary, which I feel like now is a good time to mention that you don't need God Roll relics in order to climb to depth 5. For my depth relics, I literally only have one perk on each of my 3 relics that I care about. The first has the Arcane Respec for Iron Eye, the second has the Poison ability for Iron Eye's mark. This relic effect is is the entire reason why Poison Iron Eye is so good, and the third has attack power up when facing poison afflicted enemy. Now, of course, it would be ideal to have the other perks be useful things like physical defense, physical attack, or more attack power up when facing poison afflicted enemy, but again, it's not necessary. For all of the alternate Iron Eye builds, they follow a pretty similar pattern. There's a lightning build for Fulgur and Augur, and there's a holy build for Gladius and Holster. Everything else, use the poison build, but both the lightning build and the holy build are Evergel Relic +1 character skill use and starting armament affinity lightning or holy, and all the depth relics do is buff up either lightning or holy damage. Nothing super complicated here. For the Duchess build, there's obviously the Evergel Relic. Then the second priority perk is on the depth relics. You need to have dormant power helps discover staves. This perk does an excellent job of reducing the chance that the Duchess misses the staff that she needs to output a bunch of damage. The way that this perk works is that it changes what your preferred weapon type is, which essentially just means that you're more likely to get that weapon type as a drop from any boss that isn't a night boss. The biggest lose condition with this team comp is the Duchess misses her staff, so it's important to mitigate that as much as you can. After that, the relic should stack as much improved Crystalian sorcery as possible. As you can see from these relic screenshots, our Duchess, Ratty Rye, got decently lucky with a relic set that has 3 stacks of Crystalian sorcery, Night Invader perk, magic attack power up, and damage against poison afflicted enemy. But if you didn't get as lucky, a relic set with just 4 stacks of Crystalian sorcery will still do very well. Now you may be asking why Crystalian sorcery instead of Carrion Sword sorcery, and that's because Shattering Crystal is much better than Carrion Slicer if the Duchess has wide enough damage windows to actually cast Shattering Crystal. If you're using matchmaking for your climb or doing it solo, I would suggest using Carrion Sword sorcery over Crystalian sorcery, as you don't need to rely on your teammates getting you damage windows if you're using Carrion Slicer. Finally, for the Wilder build, this one is much more focused on survivability because there's not as much important stuff that the Wilder needs to be doing, instead of just staying alive. The good news is the regular relics are all guaranteed. The Wilder's earring from his remembrance makes the ultimate even better at rezzing teammates with the fire spread, and is just overall a strong choice for Wilder. The Evergel relic and the Dark Knight of the Fathom. This relic has gotten a lot of attention on Reddit for being very good for this mode, and for good reason. It provides a lot of survivability for you and your teammates, increasing max health by quite a bit, and getting continuous HP recovery for both you and your teammates can be very helpful, especially for chip damage sustained fights like Smelter Demon. For depth relics, our Wilder Torsads is just running a bunch of physical damage relics, but honestly there's not a whole lot of reason to have your Wilder focus on anything other than survivability. That way you can funnel all of the survival items like the damage negation at full HP to the Iron Eye and Duchess if you don't end up finding 3 or more of them over the course of the run. Finally, let's talk about game-to-game strategy. What should you be aiming to do, and when should you be aiming to do it? Evergels are obviously going to be pretty high priority, but also Night Invader circles, assuming that your Duchess or high damage dealer has the Night Invader perk on their relics. There's also field bosses, particularly red field bosses, that are higher priority, and of course, the middle castle or the shifting earth, or both. To start, I would always take out the small camp that you land on to get enough runes for level 2 before checking the closest Evergel or Night Invader bubble to you. If the Evergel is a non-red boss or an easy red boss like Duelist or Bloodhound Knight, just suck it up and do the Evergel at level 2. It'll feel slow and kind of suck, but almost anything that you could be doing at this stage of the run is gonna be slow, so just get the one Evergel out of the way and get the run rolling. If it's a harder red boss, which by the way, Bestial Brigade and Beastmen of Farum Azula are very tough when they're red bosses, then skip over the Evergel for now and go on to the next thing. If you're targeting a Night Invader bubble first, keep in mind that cathedrals and forts will always only spawn 1 invader, while camps and ruins will always spawn 2. and essentially just kill the mobs at the front door of whatever type of location it is, then wait for the invaders to walk to you. Another super useful tip for night invaders is to have your Duchess use her ult if she has it, as the invaders will completely lose track of you, and the ult helps out immensely in these fights. You also, in this early section of the run, want to be checking every fort for its stone sword key check and staff check, and every cathedral for its stone sword key check, along with every rise that is conveniently on the way to the next Everjail or field boss or night invader bubble. The goal is to find a crystal staff or a rotten crystal staff for the Duchess to use, and enough stone sword keys to open every Everjail. Day 1 is basically just targeting night invader bubbles and Everjails while doing a couple of checks out of every fort, cathedral, and rise along the way. The one exception to this very simple rule is that you're going to want to hit a tunnel at some point to get a smithing stone too. The Duchess absolutely needs one for her eventual crystal staff, and that stone must get saved for the staff. She can't use it early. While the Iron Eye and Wilder can get away with using their smithing stone immediately on their starting weapon, because if you're going to be using a different weapon than the starting weapon on either Iron Eye or Wilder, it will already at least be purple rarity. And the only other time where a little bit of nuance is needed for day 1 is whether or not you should be doing a field boss along the way. It definitely doesn't make sense to target field bosses on day 1, but if you find yourself in a situation where the field boss could cause problems, like the one standing next to the Eastern Everjail, for example, or if it's a simple field boss that will die quickly, especially if it's a red corrupted enemy and you're not in a rush to get other Everjails or Night Invaders done, then it can make sense to take the time and do the field boss on the way. For day 2, it's going to depend on how good of a day 1 that you had. If you got 1 or 2 Night Invader bubbles done and 4 or 5 Everjails, then you have a good bit of spare time that you can use to take out some marked field bosses, especially the corrupted field bosses on the way to your remaining Everjails, with the plan of eventually going to the center castle or shifting Earth by the time the first circle closes on the second day. If you can't do all of that, it's totally fine, but just understand that the things that you're going to want to cut out of your route are field bosses. Then, if you have to sacrifice 1 or 2 Everjails for the sake of completing the center castle, that can totally be worth it. You'll notice that I'm not suggesting that you complete literally any boss in any fort, cathedral, ruin, or camp, and that's for good reason. Those bosses and rewards simply aren't good enough to spend your time on them. The one maybe possible exception to this rule is right at the very beginning of the game. If you don't have a good Everjail or Night Invader bubble by you early on, then it can make sense to take out just 1 fort, cathedral, ruin, or camp boss to get to level 3 and possibly have the chance at a blue weapon. There's also one other very niche reason to target these bosses, and that's if towards the end of your match, it can make sense to target any boss, including these minor location bosses, if your Duchess does not yet have the staff that she needs. Other than that, I think it's really important to remember that this game is a whole lot less about having perfect boss fights and a whole lot more about being efficient with your time and earning a build that makes the boss fights easy. Speaking of which, let's talk about the loot that you're looking for. Now, assuming that you can communicate with your teammates, everybody is looking for the same things, and you're just sharing the loot around to the players that need it. If you can't communicate with your teammates, you'll have to be a tiny bit more greedy, but you should still keep in mind what your teammates are looking for and offer them that gear if you don't find a piece of gear that's useful for your build. The priority in order of what the team as a whole is looking for is 1, a staff with shattering crystal on it. Your Duchess needs this to output damage, and that's where most of the damage is going to come from. 2, weapons with the effect improve damage negation at full HP. This perk is also the reason why you can't really take any items that have continuous HP loss as a negative perk. These defensive items should go to the Duchess and Iron Eye first, since the Wilder should be tankier by default, and having one of these is usually the difference between getting one shot or not, which is also the difference between being able to heal or not. And truthfully, all 3 players ideally would love to have 2 of these effects in their inventory each, but that rarely happens. The next thing you really should be focusing on is getting your Duchess powerful weapon passives. An 18% charge sorceries buff is probably going to be a more important upgrade to the team than any buff that would make Iron Eye or Wilder do more damage. So be on the lookout for weapon passives including sorceries, charged sorceries, magic attack power, or improved attack power at full HP. After that, there's a bunch of other stuff that's nice to have, but notably less important than Shattering Crystal and Ritual Shield effect weapons. This nice to have stuff is things like better weapons for Iron Eye and Wilder. This is going to depend on which boss you're facing, but holy damage weapons like Erdtree Bow, Siluria's Tree, and Ordovis's Greatsword are good options against Gladius and Holster. Lightning damage like Dragon Halberd or Dragon Scale Blade can be good against Fulgur and Augur, and some generally good weapons for any expedition are things like Serpent Bow, Black Bow, or Death's Poker. After that, there's good weapon passives for Iron Eye and Wilder, like improved damage when two-handing, improved charged attacks, or improved ranged weapon attacks. And that's literally the whole strategy. And if you want to see me actually put it into practice, I've been uploading full Nightreign runs to my second channel every day for almost 4 months now. You can head on over to youtube.com/2bushy or click the second link in the description and see how my team and I use this exact strategy to win our Deep of the Night games. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out one of the other challenge runs popping up on your screen right now.